All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Smoking That Ish. Another late night recording here in the D Game Podcast studios. Coming up today on Smoking That Ish. How did we do in the barbecue competition in Mitchell? You didn't even know we were there, did you? The goodies we got at Superior Buds from Lifted Labs, Belushi's Farm, Urban Extracts, the DEA's National Drug Threat Assessment, Part 1, unfortunately, because, well, there's just too much going on in a 51-page document for me to cram it all down here in 30 minutes without leaving a bunch of important stuff out. So this will be Part 1. Part 1 is going to cover more of the drug aspect and stuff like that, and then in Part 2, we will be covering the cartels responsible for all of this. The DEA's National Drug Threat Assessment will be begun and thoroughly covered today. Shout out to DGame6923 on YouTube and DGame Podcast Studios for allowing us to do what we are doing right now. Praise be to the DGame. Comments first off, just from a Wholesome Dank, our only comment so far, from last week's episode. He said to mix Strawberry Twizzler and Power Nap, both from Rare Earth Craft Cannabis. And he also said that Rare Earth is the best in South Dakota, hands down. Second is way behind. Also, I apologize if there's any issues with the volume. I kind of sat this up myself, so I'm hoping I don't mess it up too bad. Shout out to Deep in a Hole Barbecue, Bob Preston, and the whole team there at Deep in a Hole Barbecue. Me and the team, we helped Bob get third place in Judge's Choice. And thank you to Mitchell and everyone that came out, everybody that was there. There's a great car show and everything else. We had a great time. Me and Bob and the rest of the guys are going to be at a lot of competitions this year. We got one coming up in Huron, I think, on the 7th of June. There's a great big one in Vermilion coming up and a bunch of other ones. So get out there, see us, get some great barbecue. Bob is an amazing cook, dude. So get out there and check it out. The goodies that I got today from Superior Buds in Mitchell. I went with my buddy Larry because he had heart surgery and he just got his license. So I took him in there. So if you want to send Larry some prayers, lawyers, guns, and money, he'll take all of that. Lifted Labs, Rapid Rosin Gummies, dude. I got the blueberry ones here. They're 23.822 milligrams per gummy. These gummies have been really getting me through some hard times, helping me out when I feel like everything's just a little bit too much for me. I really love them, and I appreciate you guys for making them, and thank you. Urban Extracts, I'm on my second Schnitzel Cookies cart already. This is it's so good, dude. It's a 1 gram cart. Schnitzel Cookies, it's 86.41% THC, dude. So good. I'm a big fan of these guys. I think these gummies were $85. This cart was $50. I'm a big fan of these guys and everything they've done so far. Urban Extracts. The cart hits like a monster, just enough flavor, to enjoy it. But I'm all about that punch, and that thing delivers, dude. Really, really well. Belushi's Farm, dude. At Superior Buds now, they have the LA Kush. The LA Kush is there. 31.06%. Continuing the hashtag 30% summer that I've got going on here. Or then I'm going to start with this episode. Whatever. Eat shit. My new favorite strain. I'm just kidding. Thank you. My new favorite strain still is this LA Kush. It had nugs this time big enough for me to post on Instagram. So make sure you check those out. Beautiful and delicious, and now available at Superior Buds in Mitchell for $30 an eighth, dude. Get it while you can before I buy it all, because I will. The 2024 National Drug Threat Assessment brought to you by the DEA. The DEA administrator, Ann Milgram, wrote the cover letter, so I guess you do need to learn that kind of stuff for some jobs in school. Apologies to my English teacher. Anyone else notice how close Milgram is to milligram? It's literally one letter away, dude, just missing an I. So her new name is going to be Milligram Ann if she ever comes up again. The NDTA is a comprehensive strategic assessment of illicit drug threats endangering the U.S. So the assessment is an assessment, in case you were wondering. Okay. It's an intelligence assessment produced by the Drug Enforcement Administration's intelligence program. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I didn't realize that the Drug Enforcement Agency had graduated to become the Drug Enforcement Administration. So, la-dee-da to the DEA. It's used by law enforcement agencies, policymakers, as well as prevention and treatment specialists to do things like establish priorities, formulate policies, and allocate resources. It informs the public and educates them about current drug threats in the U.S. And this report also highlights the shift from plant-based to synthetic drugs, both in danger to the public and priorities for the DEA and its agents. Synthetic drugs, which are also known as nitazines, they're a big issue, man. There was 4 new nitazines discovered in 2023 alone. One of them was called Tusi, which TUSI. It's a hallucinogen, and it used to be 2C-B, which was a chemical. But at street level, it is often made from cocaine, meth, and ketamine. So can be some pretty dangerous stuff. Most synthetic drugs are Schedule 1, but that doesn't matter. The cartels and people selling them, they don't care because it offers higher profits for dealers while cutting out the dependence on plants, which are fragile, like cocaine, heroin, marijuana. That's all based on plants. So they just want to cut that out. And also synthetic drugs can be made anywhere, requiring far less space to make just some chemicals in the right process. Fentanyl and methamphetamine are the 2 biggest concerns, according to the NDTA. Responsible or involved in every fatal drug overdose in the United States, damn near, except for maybe a fraction of a percent. Fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat that the U.S. has ever faced, according to the DEA. And it can also be used, fentanyl also can be used to enhance the effects of other synthetic drugs, making it even more dangerous, making things more difficult for first responders and everything else. And fentanyl, methamphetamines, all that, most of these drugs that can be, anything that can be made powder, pretty much, can be pressed to look like any pill. So any pill not from a doctor or a pharmacist, could be laced, could even be fatal, dude. I wouldn't mess around with it. These drugs can also be placed in any powder, sometimes mixed with heroin, cocaine, and recently with this motherfucker of a drug called xylazine. Fentanyl and xylazine combine to make the drug you've been hearing about on the news called Trank. Xylazine is an animal anesthetic and not an opioid. And using this xylazine causes necrosis at the injection sites, which is rotting of the soft tissue. Basically, your flesh dies and falls off. And this leads to amputation and, in severe cases, death. It can turn gangrenous and everything else. Trank is mainly found, according to the DEA, in New Jersey, Virginia, Ohio, Maryland, and Florida. But if you've been watching the news or YouTube videos or anything on like Kensington, in Philadelphia and shit. We know just from that Trank is all over Washington, Oregon, California, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's everywhere. There have been seizures of Trank even in Utah, Wyoming, and South Dakota too, dude. It's been found by law enforcement in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico as well. The variety of synthetic drugs available, like I said, make it extremely hard for first responders to identify the cause of an overdose, making it harder for them to treat an overdose, and inevitably leading to more deaths from overdose because they don't know what they're treating. Overdoses have been on the rise in the U.S. since the 90s. This is nothing new. In the 90s, Oxycontin and opioid prescriptions increased fourfold. By 4 times they increased. So all this shit started in the 90s thanks to pharmaceutical companies and doctors. There was a huge jump in addiction, overdoses, and drug-related deaths during the lockdowns, but you don't really hear about it much. Meth is back in meth news. This will be good for all you crackheads out there and anybody who's, thinking about becoming a meth addict or something, if that's the path, if you're a fucking moron. Meth is now stronger and cheaper than ever, in case you didn't know, because of the chemical restrictions that they have, countries have enforced to try and make it so you can't make meth. They've simply just started making meth differently, and now it is more powerful and cheaper than ever before. But meth requires far more chemicals to make than fentanyl does, making fentanyl an obvious choice. But meth can also be smuggled in a liquid form similar to water and then taken to conversion labs in the U.S. and turned back into a powder. So smuggling can be easier sometimes. So you see why they dabble in all these drugs instead of just picking one main drug to run, The government's tried to ban the chemicals needed to make these drugs, but due to corruption and violent threats from cartels and organized crime, it's practically impossible. China and India both have criminal entities that will find ways to provide the chemicals that you need. The DEA's top drug seizures from 2021 to 2023, but you got to remember in a lot of these reports that 2023, for some reason, it's not 2023 anymore, but it just ended, months ago. So the numbers are still being tallied up for 2023 in a lot of these DEA reports. But cocaine seizures in 2021 were 725,390 kilos seized in 2021. Boy, we was doing some coke. But you got to remember, these are also inflated numbers from the pandemic that hit and the lockdown that ensued. In 2023, the numbers are not complete yet, but it's only 331,864 kilos. And that might be due to all the accidental overdoses witnessed by people in the country, both on the news and some in person. Methamphetamine. 2021, there was 85,582 kilos seized. 2023, without the numbers being added up, it's 78,788 kilos already. Fentanyl, on the other hand, in 2021, they seized 7,191 kilos of fentanyl. And in 2023, which is not done being added up, they're already at 14,967 kilos. So a drastic increase there. Heroin, in 2021, 3,339 kilos. And in 2023, 1,450 kilos. Almost all of the heroin in the U.S. is laced with fentanyl. So most people have just switched to fentanyl. You know, it's easier to get. You're gonna get it anyways. So at least that way you know what you're getting. If you do heroin, you know, you do have a built up tolerance to opioids. So it's easier to get into fentanyl. Heroin. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, heroin, 3,339 kilos down to 1,450 kilos. And now there's another study, the CDC's top 5 causes of drug-related deaths from 2021 to 2023. And of course, 2023 is still being counted. For heroin, 2021, 9,173 deaths. In 2023, it's 3,288 so far, due to so far according to the count. And this is the DEA's National Drug Threat Assessment. So they're the ones releasing this unfinished data, not me. Not my fault. I'm just reporting on what was released. Other opioids in 2021 accounted for 16,706 deaths. And in 2023, accounted so far for 10,509, according to the count. Cocaine in 2021 was 24,486 deaths, and the count in 2023 is already up to, they're not done counting, but it's already up to 23,652 deaths. And I would say that's almost directly related to accidental overdoses. Same thing with methamphetamines, 2021, 32,537, 2023, 28,261. And here comes our favorite, fentanyl. 2021, 70,601 deaths. And in 2023, 59,019 deaths. And it's not done being added up. That one's really, really, really on the rise because fentanyl, I guess, ODing on fentanyl, you just pinhole and then the pinhole closes and you just don't ever fucking come back. Yeah. CDC's synthetic opioid deaths. Now, this is an interesting one that they had on there because if you do a little bit of your own research, you can figure some stuff out. In 2011, there were 2,666 deaths due to synthetic opioids. In 2012, 2,628, so it actually went down. 2013, 3,105 deaths, and this is the beginning of restrictions on opioid prescriptions. 2014, 5,544 deaths. You're seeing it now steadily rise. 2015, it nearly doubles to 9,580 deaths. And in 2016, it more than doubles to 19,413 deaths. And that is when the opioid prescribing guidelines were released. And that made it now much, much more difficult to get your opioids prescribed to you. But the people were already addicted. So now they turn to street drugs. And a lot of these people know nothing about street drugs. So there goes an increase in accidental overdoses and fucking everything else, dude. They literally put this on us and now are trying to they're blaming the cartels for supplying it, but they're the ones who set us up to fail. 2017, 28,466 deaths from synthetic opioids. 2018, 31,335 deaths. 2019, this is when it's going to start getting retarded. 35,871 deaths. COVID-19 and the lockdowns came along and made it much more difficult for addicts to get the drugs that they wanted. So they started just getting what they could. 2020, 56,186 deaths. And in 2020, there's still 143 million prescriptions for opioids handed out by doctors in the U.S. 2021, 70,601 deaths. 2022, 74,225 deaths. And 2023, 59,019 so far in the count, with over 30,000 deaths in the first half of 2023 alone. Methamphetamines are methamphetamine-related deaths. Well, about half as deadly as opioids. They don't put up the numbers that opioids do. They have steadily increased at a similar rate to fentanyl and with a similar trend that we could see. Anyways, followed along with the lockdown and everything else, addiction spiked. Addiction spiked like crazy. Addiction, depression, suicide, it all spiked. Unaliving, I mean, whatever. Fuck you. The lockdowns, as far as I can tell, the lockdowns created more addicts than any other single event that I can point out, but gets almost none of the blame. And I think that's ridiculous. The government pretty much is the cause of this. Them, the regulations of opioids, the doctors, the medical industry, the big pharma, all of them. And they're the ones telling us that it's our fault that we're addicts and whatever. Not that I'm an addict, but I used to be. Yeah, it's a bunch of horse shit. THC edibles, they talked about this in the report. They need to stop looking like food and candy, dude. What the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you making them look like famous cereals and fucking everything? It literally looks like a bag of sugary snacks. And kids get into that shit. Now, granted, from 2017 to 2021, there were only 7,000 reported cases in the U.S. But still, stop it. Make them look more like medicine. Don't make it look like something a kid would love to get into, you fucking idiots. The assessment mentions hallucinogens as well, briefly stating that most people who are seeking out psychedelics are trying to self-treat physical or mental disorders. These types of drugs see a rise in popularity every couple of generations, but the DEA is more concerned with MDMA and ecstasy type drugs, things in pill form. Synthetic cannabinoids, which I did not know really, I suppose I don't know if spice is a synthetic cannabinoid, but synthetic cannabinoids are fading away, thank God, because these can kill you. If it's really, really hot out and you have no access to AC and you have underlying health conditions, you could die of dehydration. So just smoke a fucking joint and stop being an idiot. Bath salts have gone back underground, thank God. Nobody needs to be eating anybody's face anytime soon. Thank you. And that is mostly the drug stuff on here. If you notice, there was a big spike in addiction and pretty much everything that we're dealing with right now. Some people are even trying to blame the spike in depression amongst young people on marijuana. But all of this stuff can be traced directly back to the lockdowns and to all the COVID regulations and bullshit that they placed on people. And yeah, it created a lot of bullshit that nobody is dealing with, nobody's helping with. And the DEA is about 5 years fucking behind, dude. So, yeah, if you're struggling with addiction out there, tune in next week. I'll make sure I have some websites and some outreach programs to help you get off of opioids. And, but as far as I'm concerned, man, if you're on opioids, you need to get off, start with some pretty high strength edibles and work your way down to just smoking weed. And I think I know people have used it to get off of meth and other things. In my personal life, I know people that have done that. And I think that it could be used to get off of a lot of other really, really horrible things, dude. So join us next week when we will be finishing up this whole national drug threat assessment by talking about the two main offenders in this crisis, the Sinaloa and the Jalisco cartels. Thanks for smoking that ish.